Welcome to Fix It Home Improvement, covering projects that every homeowner should know and great products for home and garden.
Hi, I'm JC, and this is where we share weekly home improvement tips. I'm here with Cindy.
Hello, JC.
Hi, Cindy. Today we're going to be talking about grubs and grub control, and then a few tips on moles. So depending on your part of the country, one of the biggest lawn pests are grubs.
What are grubs?
So grubs are actually the larva stage of different types of beetles. And in the U.S., Japanese beetles, June bugs, and European chafers are probably the most popular. And so in the summer, the beetles mate, they lay these eggs, and then the first part of the developmental stage is this grub.
You want to know what's funny? I've been in hardware for over 10 years.
Okay.
And I know I know about grubs.
Sure.
And I know about Japanese beetles. We sell stuff for both of them.
Right, two different
I
products.
never realized that they were related.
Connected?
We sold a ton of that Japanese beetle stuff over the last couple of years.
Sure.
And I just thought it was like a new thing that, like when cicadas came back a couple of years ago, I just thought it was, just something that happened. And, but we always sold grub stuff, so I had no idea that the two were connected.
Yeah. So the grub itself is a dirty white color. And usually when you peel up the ground,
It could be a dirty white color.
It's not. It looks like a white, but like you got dirt on it, and then
So like an off-white?
Yeah, well, they look dirty,
Right, because they're in the ground.
Okay, all right, and they're usually in a C shape when you peel up the turf, and they have a pretty thick body. They have 6 legs on the very front part of their body and a brownish head, so they're kind of gross looking.
Yeah.
And
Because they're a bug.
Okay, and what happens is once they come out of the egg, they start eating everything in their path. So they'll eat all kinds of organic material. They'll chew up dirt, but they love the roots of grass, and they'll completely destroy them. And so that all that area underneath where the larva is feeding will die. And you'll walk on top of this grass, you'll see it start to turn brown. You might think it's either a dog spot or some type of fungal disease, but you'll have these spots that are growing throughout your lawn, and you can actually grab the turf, and if you pull it, it almost feels spongy, almost like if you were to grab an old carpet and you could kind of pull it up. And then if you pull it hard enough, it'll actually roll up just like a carpet, and you can see these grubs underneath. So they do an amazing amount of damage, and it completely kills the grass. They won't recover because the roots are gone. And not only do the grubs do a lot of damage to the lawn, but animals looking for the grubs, feeding on them, do a lot of damage.
What kind of animals?
Well, depending on the part of the country, you've got birds, crows love grubs, skunks, armadillos, raccoons, and then moles will just dig up your lawn looking for these grubs.
So if your neighbor has problems with grubs, is this something that's going to spread into your lawn?
So the grubs aren't going to move fast enough to get into your lawn, but the problem is as soon as they develop and turn into beetles, they take to the air, they fly into your flower garden or vegetable gardens, they're eating the leaves and damaging those plants. And then if you have nice grass, they love thick, plush, moist grass. So if you have a nice lawn, it's the perfect spot for these beetles to be laying eggs, and then you're going to have a problem with grubs. So the ancient Egyptians were really fascinated with the Scarab Beetles.
Why?
And well, one of their main symbols for the sun god was a dung beetle. And so what they do is they collect dung, they roll it into a ball, and they move it across the ground, and they dig a hole, and they bury it.
This is the beetle, right?
This is the beetle. And so they'll come back later and they'll eat the dung for food. And then they use these balls, so they'll form another ball of dung. They'll roll it. They'll lay an egg in it, bury it, and that's how they lay their eggs, so that the larva has something to eat when it hatches.
This is gross.
Yes. But that was because they visualized just like one of their sun gods was pushing the sun across the sky. The beetle was pushing this dung across the sands of Egypt.
This is what happens when you don't have TV or the internet.
Right. So why don't we start out talking about how to control the Japanese beetles?
Okay.
So Spectracide makes a nice product. It's called Bag-A-Bug Japanese Beetle Trap, and this is designed to trap bugs in about a 5,000 square foot area. You wouldn't want to place these traps anywhere near your vegetable or flower gardens. It comes with a little metal stand that you can hang the trap in, and then it has 2 types of lures that attract them.
How does it work?
So these pheromones that they use, they're drawn to this. They come to the top of the trap, and they fall in, and they're not able to crawl back out.
Okay.
And then they have replacement bags that you can get, and also replacement lure. And then Safer, it's called Safer Japanese Beetle Trap. They also have a trap very similar. This one is designed to kind of set on the ground. You can also hang it. And both these run probably $6 or $7.
Does the Safer one come with replacement bags or lures?
You can get replacement lures also, yeah.
Yeah. We sold both of these types a lot at the hardware store.
And customers said that they did a nice job. They trapped a lot of beetles. So if you're controlling the amount of beetles that are laying these eggs in your yard, it's one step of controlling the grub problem. Mm-hmm. So for a wide variety of adult beetles, you can actually use a spray. Spectracide has something called foliage spray. You put it on the end of a hose, and you'd spray your flowers and vegetables, and that'll kill the beetles also.
Okay.
Now for controlling the grubs, timing is the key, because the newly hatched grubs are much easier to kill in summer and early fall. They're closer to the surface, and they're much more delicate.
How long are they grubs?
So in the summer, the beetles lay their eggs, and then they turn into grubs in late summer, early fall, and then they will actually burrow down into the ground, especially in colder regions. They'll dig down like 8 inches, and then they'll reemerge in spring, and then they'll become beetles that next summer. So one way that some people suggest controlling grubs is just to allow your lawn to go dormant in the summer, because if you don't water it through July and August, beetles thrive in plush, healthy lawns. The eggs need moisture, and you'll actually kill off quite a few of the grubs as they hatch if there's no moisture in the soil. So that's just kind of one way. If you're trying to conserve water, and if you allow your lawn to go dormant, you're going to have less of a problem with grubs. And then there's a couple all-natural ways to control them. One is Milky Spore. So Milky Spore is this bacteria that infects and kills the grubs. You put it into your lawn, and you get it down into the soil.
Like, how do you put it in your lawn?
So they have an applicator that you can put like a teaspoon of this bacteria every 4 feet. You can either just dispense it by hand, or this company, one of the biggest companies is St. Gabriel Organics, and they have this hollow tube that you fill with the product, and you just hit it on the ground, and it'll dispense about a teaspoonful, and then you just walk around your yard putting these small amounts. The bacteria goes into the soil, and it doesn't affect humans or pets. It's specifically geared to infect the grub. It gets into the roots of the grass, and then as the grubs eat the grass roots and they swallow this, it infects the grub. It starts to multiply. It's like a bad science fiction movie. The bacteria starts to grow and multiply, and it'll kill the grub 7 to 21 days later, and then it just explodes. It tears open the grub, and billions of these new bacteria pour from the body. Billions. And then it starts to multiply and spread to the whole lawn. And then as time passes, in fact, in some neighborhoods, they actually are encouraging people to use this bacteria, because this bacteria will spread to neighboring lawns, and it effectively and naturally controls grubs.
It's still some of the grossest training that we do for the stores.
Yeah, with pictures, it's much better.
Yeah, the employees are always grossed out.
But what's funny is some people try to use a pesticide along with this. So they figure for the first couple of years, until you build up enough bacteria, hey, I'm going to kill what's existing with a pesticide. And you actually don't want to do that, because this bacteria needs something to live off of. So they're seeking out the grubs. If you kill the grubs ahead of time, the bacteria won't do it. So you're going to have to put up with a couple years of a grub problem, and then you'll have up to 15 or 20 years of no problem. So a 10-ounce container runs around $30, and then a 40-ounce, $80 to $100. I've seen them.
So they're like in bags, right?
Yes, bags and boxes sometimes. And so, again, a little expensive to start with, but then you're going to have years and years where you don't have to treat the lawn, and this bacteria is doing the job.
How often do you apply it?
So for the first 2 to 3 years, you want to apply it twice a year for 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
Another pesticide-free way to deal with grubs is with nematodes. And these are microscopic worm-like animals that actually enter into the grub. They release a bacteria that kills them, and then they feed on the grub. And what's nice about this is they're harmless to humans, to animals, to plants, earthworms. And it will not only kill grubs, but it does about 200 other pests, like fly larvae, any types of beetles larvae, cutworms, cockroaches, and fleas. So they're very beneficial to the lawn. What's interesting is they're actually living creatures. So when you purchase this, it usually comes in some type of packaging that keeps them cool, and you need to keep it in a refrigerator till you're ready to use it. They're very susceptible to the UV and sunlight, so you want to dispense these. The way they want you to do it is you take a hose end sprayer, put these nematodes in the hose end sprayer, and then later in the day or an overcast day, you want to wet down your lawn first, and then because they have to move into the soil, you put them into a hose end sprayer, and then you spray this into your lawn, and they actually will land on the soil or the grass. They need to work their way down into the soil, and then they'll hang out again right around the roots of the grass. So it's another interesting non-toxic way to...
Have you used these?
Yeah, in fact, I bought mine from the Environmental Factor online, and they sell it online, and you can also get it from retailers. It runs about $29.
Is this the one that came like in the egg?
Comes like in a little ball, like a little styrofoam ball. Yeah, interesting packaging. You throw it in the fridge till you're ready to use it. And then you hose it in, and it's just an all-natural way to control grubs. And I'll put a few of these companies, I'll put their information in the show notes. Another product you can get is Neem Oil. It's Neem. And this is interesting because it enters the grub. So you spray this on your lawn. In fact, Bonide has a hose end product that has neem oil in it. And it enters the grub, and it blocks the hormones that tell it to eat and to reproduce. Isn't that wild? Yes. So it stops eating, and it stops reproducing. And so it eliminates the...
So it starves to death?
Yeah. so just fascinating. So, it's just an interesting way to control grubs by manipulating their hormones.
So which is better, starving to death or
not mating?
Ingesting something that's going to eat you alive?
Yeah, both terrible way to go.
Hey, but they're all natural.
Yeah, right. Yeah, for us.
Yeah.
So that grub beater thing runs around $16 for that hose end sprayer. So why don't we cover some of the pesticides? If you have a really active bad grub problem and you want to solve it immediately, Bayer Advanced has a 24-hour grub killer. This is designed to kill everything in your lawn within 24 hours, and it kills a variety of insects, but then it slowly becomes inert in the soil after 3 to 6 days.
Is this a spray?
This is a granular, so you'd put it into a spreader. They're going to have the settings on the bag. You're going to apply this, and you're going to thoroughly water it in. And you want to keep kids and pets off the lawn until it's completely dry. You want it off the grass and into the soil. And then once the grass is dry, it's safe to go back on.
What size area does this do?
The smaller bags, well, the 10-pound bags do about 5,000 square feet, and all of these companies are going to have 5,000 square foot, and most of them are going to have 5,000 and 15,000 square foot bags. And this one for this 24-hour grub killer is going to run you probably around $18. And then Bayer Advanced has a season-long product too. It's granular. You're going to put an application down in spring for season-long control, but you could also put it down in summer or fall, and again you're going to have your most effective control in late summer, early fall, when the grubs are newly hatched and they're the most sensitive to these chemicals. Again, and Bayer actually has a new product that just came out that has a turf revitalizer. It's like marked on the bag. It has a little bit of fertilizer in there for root growth. To kind of beef up the grass that's been damaged around there.
So for the season long, do you have to water that in?
so almost all these products, you're going to want to water them in. So you'll put them down and then water them in so that they're not sitting on the surface. You want it in the soil, and then especially if you have kids or pets, you don't want them picking this up on themselves. So water it in, wait till it's dry, and then it's safe to go on your lawn.
But what does that mean, water it in?
So, well, most of these companies want you to give it about an inch worth of water. So, when you're going to probably take 15 or 20 minutes and thoroughly water your lawn so it's completely off the leaves of the grass.
So are you suggesting with the sprinkler or with just the hose?
Yeah, either way. I mean, you can use a hose and sprayer and just walk the whole lawn. But if you've got sprinklers, then turn them on. And again, depending on the timing, that's why it's nice to have a rain gauge, and you've already, because your lawn should get 1 inch of water a week. And, we've talked about that before. Again, for a healthy lawn, you want to do all that watering at one time. So give it an inch worth of water. It's going to be healthy for your yard for that week, and then it's going to be safer to walk on your yard. And it gets the product down right where it needs to be, too, for the grubs. And especially if you're putting it down in summer and in later fall, the grubs are closer to the surface, so it's much easier for the product to do its job. So another product is the Jonathan Green Grub Control.
Okay.
And this is granular. You would water it in also. They have a product that does 5,000 square feet for around $19, and it's season long, so you can put this down in spring, summer, or fall, and it does a great job of controlling grubs. There's Scott's Grubex. Mm-hmm. This is also a season-long product. It's granular. You're going to water it in after you put it down, and this does a variety of insects. It'll do Japanese beetles, June bugs, northern chafers, southern chafers, chinch bugs. Mm-hmm. And for their 10-pound bag, it's around $20. And then Bonide, we talked about their hose end sprayer that has neem oil in it. Mm-hmm. They also have a granular version, which is a pesticide, that you would, again, use a spreader, water it in within 24 hours. And this is a season-long product also, and they run probably around $18 in most retail stores. So these are some of the highest rated products that you can get for controlling grubs.
So do you have any other tips when using pesticides?
So if you're putting down a granule product, I would mow my lawn first. I'd rake up any of the clippings. You don't want any leaves or debris blocking this chemical from getting into the soil. And then most manufacturers recommend that you use a crisscross pattern when you're applying it with a spreader. So you'll go one direction and then the opposite direction to make sure you have really good coverage. Mm-hmm. And then just thoroughly water it in. And if you use those tips, you'll have great effectiveness with these chemicals. So those are the basics for controlling grubs. The other problem that we have in the Midwest, we're in the Chicago area, are moles. And, Chicago, Iowa, Nebraska. I spent every summer at my grandparents' in Nebraska, a little town, Bassett, Nebraska. Mm-hmm. And the moles were amazing. A mole can actually burrow and dig 150 feet.
Wow, that's crazy.
Tunnel a day. And, there was very sandy out in, this Nebraska where I was, and the mounds were just these ridges, which were tripping hazards. And my grandma had just a beautiful garden, a huge garden, and
What'd she have in your garden?
All kinds of stuff, man. Everything from mulberries. She canned a lot. Mm-hmm. But in fact, we're going to be doing a canning episode coming up, talking about that. But she was just amazing with all the stuff. But my grandma and my grandpa both hated the moles, and so what my grandpa would do, they have these entrances and exits from the tunnels that look like little volcano. It's this round mound built up and then like a depression in the center. Right. So I loved playing with this stuff. I would take the hose and fill it, and I'd be playing with my toys and G.I. Joes. Mm-hmm. But my grandpa, what he would do is he would take the hose and shove it down one of the entrances and just let the water run all day and just try to kill these things, because they would just burrow and they'd mess with the garden, tearing through the roots and killing a lot of the plants. They're a burrowing mammal. And they're 6 to 8 inches long. They're wild looking. They have a hairless snout, real tiny little eyes, and then they have these webbed feet with these huge claws on it.
Yeah, they're kind of creepy looking.
They're freaky looking. And what's interesting is they will have 2 to 7 babies every year, and then after about 4 weeks, they're very solitary, so they don't kind of hang together in one tunnel or one little nest. They all go out and they start creating all their own tunnels. So if you don't control them in some areas, I mean, they will just destroy your yard. And so there's a few different ways to work with them. Like what my grandparents would do is they would take the mesh netting, they would take like hardware cloth,
right?
And at one point, what we did one summer is we dug all around the garden, and we buried this, vertically, and to try to keep them from getting into the garden, because they usually only tunnel from 6 to 12 inches. So I think we had like a 24-inch garden cloth, and we buried this a little bit above. You could see the top of this, and it was a project, man.
Yeah, I bet.
It was a hassle. But we did that. That was pretty effective there. But there's a few different ways you can control moles, and one company that we've used, and they're probably one of the biggest, is Sweeney's. And they have a website, wrsweeney.com, and I'll put that information in the show notes. But they have traps, they have a poisoned bait, and they have a gummy worm, because a poisoned gummy worm.
Nice.
So moles love worms and insects, in the soil. And so they've developed these different products. And the traps are interesting because you would wet the soil first, and then you would find an active tunnel. And the way most companies suggest figuring out which tunnel is active, because they're constantly creating new tunnels.
Right.
They'll use one tunnel for a certain amount of time, and then they'll move on to another tunnel. And to find the active tunnel, you'd take a stick and you'd poke a hole in one of the tunnels that look active, and then you check it in 24 hours to see if they've repaired it, so that depression will be pushed out and repaired. And once you find an active tunnel, you would hose this area down, you'd set this trap above it, and then when they pass through, it triggers it, and then it impales them and kills them, which is kind of a sad way to kill them. But that's one way you can. So
it's a death trap. Not like a live and
no,
release.
No, it's definitely designed to kill them. And then this company, Sweeney, they have gummy worms that they develop, and then they kind of suck them up and eat them, and it kills them. And then they also have poison peanuts that we sold a lot at the hardware store, and it comes in this funnel-shaped container.
Right, yeah.
And so the funnel-shaped container is actually used as a tool. So you take the narrow point and you shove it into one of the tunnels. First you're checking to see if it's active, and then it's a way to create a hole so that you can drop these poisoned peanuts into it. And the customers always thought it was poisoned peanuts because that's the name of the product, but it's actually these pellet-looking things, like almost like quarter-inch little pellets that are it's a bait and a lure, and then they eat them and it kills them. But those are probably the most popular ways to deal with moles if you have them, is traps, like some type of lure, so these poisoned peanuts or these gummy worms.
I think that wraps up this episode.
If you like the show, you can subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher Radio. In fact, you can subscribe on a lot of different podcast apps. And if we're not on your favorite podcast app, if you could please email us at fixitpodcast@gmail.com, and then we can make sure that podcast app gets our RSS feed.
If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review.
And you can go on to our YouTube channel if you'd like to see some home improvement videos. It's Fix It Home Improvement Channel on YouTube.
And you can subscribe there.
And tell a friend.
Thank you for listening.
Talk to you next week.